Welcome to Japan Explained, a multicultural podcast between two fun ladies, Jean and Yoko. We've been talking about Japan's aging demographic lately, how people in Japan live longer than the global average, but we've also been talking about the declining birth rate. And Yoko, when I asked you recently about why do Japanese people live so long, you cited three things. You said diet, exercise, and healthcare. So today, could we talk about diet? I love to talk about food.
Yes, I love that too. A lot of people have been looking into whether there is a link between traditional Japanese cuisine called Washoku and longevity. So Washoku uses ingredients according to the season or holidays and emphasizing natural flavors of ingredients. For instance, by using umami rather than the heavy seasoning. But one important aspect of Washoku is low level of fat.
That's right. Let's look at some examples. According to a study published in the journal Nutrients in 2022, you can see that the average American consumes 50% more than the average Japanese every day. Also, there is plenty of data showing a link between longevity and daily calorie intake. Vaclav Smil, a Canadian author and public policy academic, noted that the Japanese consume around 2,700 kilocalories per day on average. That is about 25% less than in Western nations. The sources of fat and nutrients are important too. Japanese food is traditionally low in fat, and Japan's diet of more fish and soy products may suppress conditions like heart disease.
Yeah, it is true that we consume lots of soy products. So our listeners may have heard of miso, soy sauce, natto, tofu, and edamame. They are all soy products.
And I love all of them except for natto. I don't really like natto.
Okay.
And also, Yoko, I know that in Japan, fried and fatty foods are very popular these days.
Yes, you're right. So over the past few decades, everyday diet includes a lot more Western style food. And now, with food delivery services, I think the average Japanese is getting less exercise too. Anyway, we love high-fat, high-calorie foods like pizza, hamburgers, and fatty Wagyu steaks too. But Japanese are genetically predisposed to gaining stomach fat. So we are more at risk of things like diabetes.
That's right. Yoko, in the last episode, you said you wanted to talk about shoku-iku, or food education. And that makes me think about Japanese school lunches. There are so many videos and articles out on the internet about how great Japanese school lunches are. So I'm wondering if that's what you mean when you say food education.
Yes, of course, learning good eating habits start at home. But what you eat in school and how teachers talk about food, those things are important too.
That's right. There is some information about it on the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fisheries website. School lunches were first started in Japan around 1899. And in 1923, they started to focus on improving nutrition for children. But of course, during the war, there were terrible food shortages, and that program had to be suspended. Then finally, in 1954, a school lunch law was established, and that has been going ever since then. In my research on the U.S. occupation of Japan, I was struck by how bad the food shortages were in Japan right after the end of the war. And I even found a letter in the National Archives sent by a Japanese mother to the U.S. occupation authorities. This was in 1946, right at the end of the war. And she said that all her village was receiving in food aid was soy flour. And they had never cooked with soy flour, so they didn't know what to do with it. And she really pleaded for rice.
Wow, that must have been terrible. So I was surprised that the staple food in post-war school lunches was bread rather than the rice. So I cannot understand the background or intent behind promoting the bread-based diet to us. So Japanese, and especially to children, given the rice is our staple food. I believe this marked the beginning of the shift in the Japanese diet.
Yeah, I think it came in part from those occupation years. At first, right at the end of the war, the US was not sending food to Japan. But after a while, it became clear that people were actually starving to death, and they started to be more worried that there could be like a violent revolt in Japan if they didn't do something. So they did start sending food in about the middle of 1946. And I think they probably sent wheat flour because that is a staple of Western diets to make bread.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. And personally, I love bread. I love it so much that I even bake it by myself. But at that time, perhaps conditions such as the people's physical strength or the quality of the soil or the state of the land made growing rice impossible. So if anyone knows about this era, we would love to hear from you. So please leave the comment below. So by the way, one of the goals of the 1954 law was to maintain and promote health through the proper nutrition. And in 2009, they made laws for school lunches even stronger.
Yeah, and it's interesting that school lunch programs in the US date from around the same time as Japan. And they were really meant to provide meals to poor children, and also during the Great Depression to use surplus agricultural produce. The National School Lunch Act of 1946 in the US coincides with the reforms made in Japan. I think that's kind of interesting. But over time, American school lunches really took on characteristics of fast food, I think probably to save money. And they have tried in recent years to revise food standards to improve the nutritional quality.
So let's dig deeper to explore the link between school lunches and the Japanese longevity, looking at what is actually served and understanding the nature of the food education, shoku-iku, being taught to the children.
That sounds great. Be sure to listen to our next podcast, everyone. We are interviewing a Japanese school lunch staff member. And remember, if you found this video interesting, please hit the like button. We'll see you next time on Japan Explained. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Please share your feedback, needs, and idea via the survey form in the description.
Right now, we're working on a book called Japan Explained. You don't want to miss it. So subscribe to our podcast or our YouTube channel and keep track of all the latest on www.japanexplained.net.